placeholders. My desktop computer was not working all afternoon. It kept restarting, so I have my laptop here just in case I have to go to that instead. But I have that one on low volume, so we won't get feedback. Mr. Brown, Councilman Brown, may be a little late to the meeting. He is getting his COVID shot at 6:10. We're going to try to go out there earlier, see if we can get it earlier, but he may not be online until 6:15, 6:30.
Hey, Joel, since I have you on here, I sent you an email from outside counsel, from Labor Council.
Yeah, I saw that, and it looked like a green light to me.
It is.
I wrote back to you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. I'll call this meeting in stated session of City Council to order this March 10th date, 2021. Please bow your heads for the invocation. Heavenly Father, as we gather here this evening, let us be mindful of the struggles that our country and particularly our city continue to find due to the pandemic. Our financial woes with the city continue into 2021 as we knew we would. We based our budget on recovering in July 1. So please help us get the vaccine out and vaccinate as many people as possible so that we can curb this pandemic and get our city and our country and our world back to normalcy. Amen. Pledge of the flag. Get the flag. Hold on. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start with the meeting, just for the public who's on, I know there's quite a few. There's at least 7 or 10 now, maybe. You see my name twice because I was having problems with my desktop today. So if it goes off, I have my laptop here. That's the reason why I have not been able to figure out how to clone myself. So there's not two of me. It's the same person, just two different computers. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Mr. Brown? Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Mr. Milan?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mrs. Volcano?
Here.
Mayor Pianto?
Here. Approval of the agenda. Any additions, changes? Move to approve by Dr. Ruggles.
Second.
Second.
Second by Madam Volcano. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto.
Aye. Action on our minutes of our February 24th meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Moved by O'Connell,
Second.
second by Volcano. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger.
Aye.
Okay, at this time in our meeting, we have public comment on agenda items only. If anybody in there would like to raise their hand, the button's at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to raise your hand, if you'd like to address a topic that is on council tonight. If there is no, at the end of the meeting, there is another time for you to be able to ask comments, make concerns, questions, whatever you like on any matter related to the city of Easton. Okay, I see no one. Do you see anyone, Tracy?
No, I do not, Mayor.
I don't see anyone right now. Okay, moving on. Consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Under the consent agenda, we have a resolution which would approve an agreement with No Nonsense Neutering, a resolution approving appointments and reappointments to various authorities, boards, and commissions, a resolution authorizing the application of a Northampton County Livable Landscapes Grant, resolution authorizing the application of a DCNR Community Conservation Partnership Program grant, approving an agreement with the Easton Women's Softball League, and approving an agreement with the Men's Senior Baseball League. They are both resolutions as well.
I move the consent agenda.
Moved, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Jim Ettinger. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
and Mayor Panto.
Aye. At this time, there's no reports to be received by council, so we'll move right on to committee reports. I'm going to skip the Finance Committee for now until we see if Councilmember Brown gets here. Economic Development Committee, Councilmember Volcano.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make everyone aware that the Main Street organization of GDP applied for a 5-year Keystone Main Street redesignation, and they were once again awarded it. So that doesn't bring any monetary money to them at this point, but it's very helpful when they go to apply for grants to have that designation. So we're very proud that they were able to send all that paperwork in, because it is quite inclusive and quite lengthy, and to get approved again, it's quite a feat. So thank you again to GEDP and the members and all those that have put the time in to do that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Volcano. Planning and Coach Committee, Mr. O'Connell.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, Public Safety Committee, Dr. Ruggles.
Thank you. We did have a meeting this past week related to the fire apparatus report that was submitted from an external consultant. I think a lot of real good discussion, questions on the report. It's fairly detailed, talking about the various fire engines and other apparatus that the fire department has, their condition and age. So, all of that was discussed. Louis, do you want to add anything on this? Louis was at the meeting also, so.
To piggyback on what Roger just had mentioned, the meeting included various departments, and in general, we have an aging fleet, which is not necessarily a surprise, which with an aging fleet brings higher maintenance costs. as part of, in the next several weeks to, I would say 30 to 60 days, as the administration presents a capital plan, a multi-year capital plan to council, we will also provide some recommendations on how to replace the fleet, because it's going to require some immediate attention, and we have several options. So we're looking to put together a plan. But from a high level, I think having this appraisal done, I think was certainly worthwhile, and something that we should look in general to have conducted. And I was talking to Roger about this, maybe every so many years. And in my mind, I was thinking every 5 to 10 years. And I think that would be a good practice in order to have. It's very good to have an independent consultant come in and put together a plan on our vehicles. At least show us on what their perspective is. That's all, Roger. That's all I have.
Yeah. I think one of the things that was an advantage to me, not being, a firefighter or in that profession, was seeing a set of eyes from outside coming in and conducting the evaluation, and allowing us to see through his eyes what he saw. And I mean, he's a retired firefighter from New York City. He has had lots of experiences. What he does now is the consulting. And I think he pointed out a lot of things that we really need to pay attention to in going forward. But I think we're going to need, as Liz said, we're going to need to have a plan for the future, not only on the capital side, how we purchase the fire apparatus, but also on the maintenance side. How do we maintain this equipment? I mean, I said, these fire engines are the most expensive things that we have as far as equipment is concerned in the city. And, we should be able to maintain them at a very high level. And I think that's something that we need to really take stock of as we go forward.
Will the report be distributed to council?
I'm sorry?
Will the report be distributed to council?
I don't see why it wouldn't be. Yeah.
I mean,
we can distribute it, sure, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, we're discussing something we haven't seen yet. So, I mean, if we can maybe have a committee meeting about this,
yeah,
and give us some time to review it, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, it's somewhat. I mean, I'm not downplaying. It's somewhat lengthy. It's 72 pages.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I think it would be something that would be valuable for everybody to take a look at.
Sure.
Anything else, Dr. Ruggles?
I don't know if you want to bring that up. This is a question that Mayor, you and I had last time, and I noticed that Mark had sent us a thing on the tax, unpaid tax accounts. I mean, we brought that up, but I mean, do you want to do that under finance or where?
We can do that under finance, sure.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Public Works, Councilmember Eddinger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several pieces of several resolutions coming to council later on regarding the construction of the new parking garage. Some members expressed some
Is anyone else having a problem hearing him?
Yes, we all are. Just cutting in and out.
Yeah, I am.
I am too.
Okay, let me see if I can you hear me now?
That's better.
Better.
Okay, so I invite
Better.
Mr. Hopkins here if anybody has any other questions on any of the matters that I'll be doing later on in this meeting. Mr. Hopkins is here.
That's fine. That'll be good. We can do it then. Or you can do it now. It doesn't matter to me.
I'm sorry.
You could either discuss it now or when we get to them.
Okay. Well, if nobody has any, well, yeah, we can hang around. We'll discuss it when they come up then.
Okay.
And I also wanted to tell you that I invited Glenn Fair to express some of his concerns that he had about snow removal and several things. So under public comment, if Mr. Hopkins would hang around to address some of his concerns, I would appreciate it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Next one is Administration Committee, Mr. Milan.
I have no report, Mayor.
Board of Solicitor, Mr. Shearer.
Yes, thank you. With respect to the contracts that Mr. Ettinger just discussed, that's under item 12 on the schedule B, small b through small g, I have suggested, and apparently all the contractors are willing to agree, that when these are voted on, it be voted on pursuant to a added language that would be added to 6.2, where it talks about litigate. If there's a dispute, litigation would be in a court of competent jurisdiction. We would add the words to each of those contracts, and parties agree that venue for any dispute will be with the Court of Common Pleas of Northampton County, PA, period. So when those come up, they should all be subject to amendment or approval, subject to amendment, that language will be added. And apparently each, according to Dave Hopkins, each of the contractors agreed. They've already signed it as it is. Of course, City Council has not approved it as it is, so it's perfectly appropriate to come back and say that the approval will be with this additional language, and they could then initial it for Dave's purposes. So that I have no other report besides raising that point.
Mayor, I spoke with Dave Hopkins earlier on that, and I'll make those, I'll add that phrase to those contracts tomorrow.
Thank you. Mayor's report. The only thing I will say is that the special meeting is a hearing that I'm having on Tuesday, March 23rd. If anyone feels uncomfortable coming, we'll try to get that Zoomed as well. But it will be an in-person meeting at St. John's Lutheran Church, which holds over 600 people. They have pews marked off for social distancing. We will require everyone that comes in to wear a mask. If we should have over 100 people, we will have divided the meeting into, the first part will be about chickens, the second part will be about the downtown parking permit program, and then anything else anybody wants to say. We will monitor it so that we don't have over the 15%. And then our fire department will go in and we have a aeration for COVID and bacteria that we'll do the next day. Speaking about that, my comments about the downtown parking permit program have really been taken out of context and a lot of false information. I'm getting a lot of phone calls and emails about people thinking I was recommending the cease and desist of the program. I am not recommending that by any stretch of the imagination. All I'm trying to do is manage that program in a better way so that these new apartments coming on don't get a parking permit for $100. We currently have about 911 parking meters in downtown Easton, and we have over 660 people that have parking permits. So if you're coming downtown in the weekends, you know that it's very difficult. People come home from work on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and they don't leave till Monday morning, and they're parked on our streets. The only thing I can say is there's ways we can work on this. Obviously, my plan that I will present at the meeting does include lower rates for residents in the parking garages, etc. But right now we have many over 1,500 private parking places in downtown Easton, and only 911 public spaces. We all know about the towing vehicles that are carting off cars that are parked on private property, charging them $350 cash, $50 a day storage. That's real. I was out to dinner, my wife and I, on Saturday night. We had a very difficult time parking. Well, we parked in the garage, no problem. And when we walked down around the corner by the post office, the parking lot was full. And that is one owner that has every right to tow their cars. The signage is there. It's blatant. It's right in front of you, hit you in the smack in the face. You're going to park in that lot or other lots downtown. You get towed, it's $350 cash. So I remind you that the downtown parking permit program, we want to institute some changes, not elimination. And I think that's important that people recognize that. And yes, downtown residents, I started the program myself when I was mayor, back with city council approval back in the 80s, mid 80s, and it was $100 a year because we couldn't get people to live downtown. Today we don't have that problem. People want to be in our center city. So we'll talk to other communities. We know that Bethlehem and Allentown also have those parking permits. We'll see how they manage theirs, and we'll try to come back in 2 weeks with some recommendations. Ultimately, it'll be up to city council. It is part of the ordinance. The other thing is, the second item is the federal dollars. You've seen my emails since last March, begging our federal representatives for direct aid to cities. You saw my emails over the weekend, trying to get that approved by the Senate. I've had correspondence and emails going to the Senate, the House, Republican senators, Senator McConnell, and we were able to get it. As a matter of fact, the Senate restored the $5 billion that was cut, and we now have a lot of money going to municipalities. And sure enough, we were very excited. And when we found out that Easton was not being considered a metro city and only getting $2.69 million, which is a substantial amount of money, but it's only half of what we lost last year, maybe even less than half. We were concerned because there's so many things we wanted to do with business grants, mortgage grants, rent grants. There's so many things we wanted to do for our people and help them put money back into our economy that the last 2 days have been a whirlwind of lobbying efforts with Senator Casey, Congresswoman Wild, various members of the House and Senate. Today I had drafted a letter to Secretary Yellen of the U.S. Treasury where this is coming from. And we know that the county executive has been very supportive, and the director of DCED, that we will get our share of their money because, you know, we signed an agreement with them that 42% would come to Easton. But the fact of the matter is, we're a metro city. We are labeled Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton in the MSA. We meet all the qualifications for a metro city. They should not have ignored us as a non-entity, is what the category is. When you look at cities like Sharon, Pennsylvania, which has about 14,000 population, and is getting like $13.6 million, and Easton, and then you look at a township, a wealthy township like Palmer Township, our neighbors, they're slated to get $2.1 million, only $500,000 less than us. We have the highest percentage of low moderate income families in Easton. We need to help them, and this money is meant to put money back into the economy. If you looked at our money, our real estate, we're double in the delinquents of real estate from last year, double. And most of that money is from landlords whose tenants aren't paying the rent, so they can't pay their mortgages. So, and they're not paying their taxes. So we have a lot to do yet this year to get out of this pandemic. And the 19,000 members or communities in the United States lost last year $136 billion in revenue. We're well over $5.5 million that we lost. This year, you know, our budget, for example, admissions tax is based on 50% of our normal. We're nowhere near that for January. In January and February, we collected $48. Okay, the only thing open is the Crayola, which is not garnering the people coming into them because people are still afraid to go out. We are doing well at our restaurants. The restaurants are doing very well. The people are coming back to our restaurants, but we don't get much from restaurants. We get earned income tax from restaurants if they're employing people, but the business privilege tax is 0.001%. So on every $1 million, it's like $1,000 or $1,500, 1.0015. It's $1,500 for every $1 million they do. So we're going to continue to put the pressure on. Lewis, John Kingsley, and I are working the lobbying, the effort. But if you know of anyone, you should be calling Congressman Wild up. You should be calling Senator Casey up. They've been two staunch supporters of the program. But getting back to the county, we've signed that consortium, which HUD encouraged us to do, as you recall, with CDBG funds about 3 years ago. And we get 42% of the county's money that they get. And it ended up being about $100,000 more for us in the community owned block grant, which is great. And both County Executive McClure and Tina Johnson, the director of DCED, have committed to giving us a large share of their money. But that still has to be approved by county council. So anyone you know in county council, make sure you let them know that, hey, this is coming up. And we remember we went in this partnership. It doesn't work if you get all the money and we get nothing. That's not a partnership. So the good news is that the metro city definition is certainly Easton. And it says that you could be a non-entitlement city that is a metro city. And that's what we did 3 years ago with CDBG. We opted out of the entitlement, so we don't get a direct funding from CDBG. It goes to the county, and then we get 42% of the county's allocation. I just want to keep you updated and saying, if you have anyone that you can call, put the pressure on them. We need this change. This isn't fair. And it's not whether the 2.69, listen, I'll be the first one to admit, $2.69 million will help. You know that, and I know that. But it's not fair when Allentown's going to get $57 million, Betham's going to get $33 million, City of Sharon, Hazleton, Williamsport, they're all more $10 million more than us. We need to make our voices known. We need to remind the federal government that we are Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton. And Easton is a metro city. We have all the problems of a metro city. We have all the gang violence, all the drug dealing of a metro city. We're 50 miles north of Philadelphia and 70 miles west of New York City. We need that funding to help us help reignite the economy. Our goal is to sit down and make a recommendation to City Council of what we think would, like, for example, we know that the winter market last year, which was done primarily with federal dollars through the CARES Act from the county, really, there's no doubt about it, help our businesses downtown and in the city get through the holidays and start this year with some money in their bank. That's not going to happen with only $2.69 million. We know that the first thing we're going to do, as I said on my email, is replenish the fund balances. We're going to replenish the general fund. We're going to eliminate that furlough that's still there for $240-some thousand. We're going to eliminate that. We're going to, we know that the garage is going to be a little bit higher than we expected, mainly because of COVID. All those contractors didn't work last year, so they're making it up this year. And we want to make sure that we disperse that funding in a proper manner. We know that homelessness is a problem. Imagine if we could build an addition onto Safe Harbor to increase our homeless shelter by 20 beds. I mean, wow. What if we could build that community center in the West Ward? I mean, an iconic community center where kids can get off the street and participate in good games rather than the bad games. So we have some ideas we were really anticipating between $15 and $20 million. All the people I talked to in Washington were telling me we're going to get this. Oh, if it goes through Saudi, you're going to get this much money. And we come back with 2.69. So you're going to be hearing more and more from us about lobbying the federal government. But I just wanted to encourage you to assist us if you can. Anytime you get, Connor Kapoor is a local guy. He's the head of the Lehigh Valley office for Senator Casey. I mean, I've called, everybody I can in Washington who called me to let me know first, just so you know your dues are well paid, are well spent. Not only the $60 billion that the National League of Cities got us, but the Pennsylvania Municipal League. Rick Shuttler is the one who called me yesterday and ruined my freaking day. I was having a great day, and my staff will tell you I'm still depressed. I mean, when you think you're going to get so much money, then it's cut by 20 points, you're concerned. But Rick Shuttler from the Pennsylvania Municipal League, the director, called me to say, Sal, did you see these numbers? What happened? Why are you should be up there close to $20 million. I said, yeah, I know, Rick. I said, now that you're showing me, and he sent me the spreadsheet. it's not good when you see cities like State College and Hazleton and Sharon, and I don't begrudge them any money. We're all having problems, but they're smaller than Easton, and they're getting $10 to $12 million more than us. So I'm asking you. That's the end of my report. I'm not going to belabor my concerns about the federal government. We're confident that we're going to succeed, but we need help, and we need our federal legislators to help us. I will tell you that I've talked to Senator Toomey since last March a couple times. He is not going to help us, and I understand, and I respect his position. His position is the same position we have. The state of Pennsylvania still has money they didn't disperse from last year. Why should you give us more? But we keep telling him, and Lewis and John Kingsley and I were talking today, late this afternoon. Secretary Janet Yellen, of the Secretary of the Treasury, she gets it. She gets it. She said right out, I forget what show, Lewis, you were watching, but right on the news commentator, she said her comments were about giving the money to directly to cities because A, they will fast start the economy and it'll be stretched over time. You know, we have till 2024 to spend this money. So that almost ensures to us that we won't have a tax increase next year or the year after because our people can't afford it. And the money they're not paying us in taxes, they can spend on other things and invigorate the economy. So that's where we're at. And if the Eastern Area School District doesn't get enough money from the state, you know, maybe we'll help them too because kids have to get back to school. As a former school teacher, I can tell you, this virtual learning isn't working. It's not working. These kids and the socialization is not there. We need to get kids back in school. And if we can help, we want to do that. So if there's any questions, we'll move on to the meeting. There's no correspondence. Unfinished business, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, is Mark Listenicki going to give a report under Kenny?
Yeah, Mr. Brown still didn't come in. So Mark, you want to talk about Finance Committee?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As Dr. Ruggles noted earlier today, I did send out an email with a couple of attachments, and I'd like to address those quickly, starting with February 2021 results. As has been our practice over the last probably now close to a year, we are presenting preliminary results at the first meeting of each month and then following up with more definitive results at the second meeting. Because we've only had really 5 business days so far to process stuff, I would caution everyone that looking at the results, it may be a little premature to do that. However, if there are any pressing issues, I would ask that council please bring them to my attention. Otherwise, we'll have more definitive numbers at the end of the month. Any questions on February so far? Okay. If not, we'll shift over to receivables. As Dr. Ruggles noted, at our last meeting, we did talk about receivables, and I brought up the fact that we sent over a large number of accounts to Portnoy for collections for real estate taxes that were not paid last year. In the second attachment that I provided, there were 3 pages, first being a breakdown of these unpaid taxes. So just to summarize, we sent over 736 delinquent accounts, which represented about 691,000. It was probably close to double what we did the prior year. I think it was 83% over what we did last year. So rather large numbers. Some of the key takeaways in there are that the mortgaged homes, from the information that we have, represented about 4% of the total, and rentals represented about 70% of the total. So as the mayor pointed out, that there's a rather large number of rental properties that were on that list of delinquents versus owner occupied. Are there any questions on that first table, if you will, regarding unpaid 2020 real estate taxes? Okay, if not, then we'll go over to the second page, which touched on the current utility receivables. So I broke that out for sewer, trash, and stormwater between two groupings, what we have currently in-house. So in other words, what's actively managed by the finance team, and then Portnoy accounts. So these are accounts where over the last several months, bills have not been paid, and we have, based on criteria that we've worked up here internally, we have sent those off to Portnoy. Let's see here. Now, since we have now gotten over our first installment payment for taxes, which tends to take up a lot of the team's time, we are planning on refocusing on our collections efforts to address these uncollected receivables for sewer, stormwater, and trash. I will present at our next meeting our plan of attack, and be sure to continue to update council on how we are faring with those efforts. I did not include real estate taxes in the current receivables, only, as I mentioned, because we just got through the initial payment phase, and I think it's a little early to say where we are. I will try to pull together a comparative view over the last several years of who's made those first installments or quarterly payments, or the 2% discount rate, and see if I can provide that at our next meeting so that we can maybe judge at that point. But it was a bit too early, just a couple days after that to get that. Are there any questions on current utility billing receivables? Dr. Ruggles.
Yes, I just had a question on your chart. You have in-house, and I'm reading this as greater than 90 days.
Yep.
And I read that as those bills have not been sent to Portnoy. Why do we keep people 90 days in-house? I mean, it seems to me they hit the 60-day mark. They're at Portnoy. I mean, why do we have people $118,000 in trash over 90 days? I mean, that just doesn't seem right to me.
That's a fair observation, and I will maybe address part of that in the next slide. But what we wanted to do was try to work up a plan to attack some of these internally, because as we go to the next slide and we talk about Portnoy and their collections efforts, while they are very effective, it does take quite a while to get that money in. So we wanted to attempt to do that internally in-house first, and then if we're not successful, or for those accounts where we are not successful, we would be turning those over.
So, okay. Well, I mean, I would think that if you're not successful in 60 days, then that's a lot. To me, that's a long enough period of time. I mean, you stretch it out to 90 days, and people are just getting further and further behind on their bills, and I just think that's. I mean, it's a big jump. I mean, you see in the 30 days, 80,000. I'm just using the totals here, but 88,000. 60 days, 61,000. Then you get to 90 days, and it jumps to 250,000. I mean, that's a big number. And I mean, same thing with Portnoy too. I mean, Portnoy, greater than 90 days. The other question I had here is, we don't have any that are over 120 days.
Actually, we do with our conversion, and that's part of why we have not focused on internal collections as strongly as we would like. Is with conversion from Freedom over to Diversified, the clock was basically reset on a lot of these accounts. So rather than taking the date that we had, the aging that we had already built into the system under our old system, they reset the clock. So these 90 pluses are actually, many of them are probably much older than that. So we cut over.
That concerns me even more. That means that there's more in that pool of greater than 90 that are even further out there that are in-house. And I don't see any reason to have those still in-house. I really don't. I mean, if you're spending all of this time trying to get money, of your people time trying to get money from people who haven't paid for 3 months, I mean, you know better than I do, but it just seems like that's a waste of time to me. I mean, give it to the people that do this, you know, the port officer who does it. And I mean, as you said, if you look at the next sheet that you're about to go over, it appears they do it pretty well.
Right.
And you know, I'm just concerned that, you know, if you're really trying to collect bills that are 90 to 120 or even more in arrears, I think that's a waste of time on your people's part. And that's just my opinion and my observation. But I think that you need to look at that and say, hey, we've done this for 60 days. We haven't been successful. Here you go, you know, and send it off to Portnoy. But I mean, that would be my preference. So your people don't waste their time.
Thank you, Dr. Ruggles. And again,
I think Dr. Ruggles is absolutely right. It's one of the consternations we've had of trying to collect from robotic people who don't have money. And the longer we let them go, the best chance of getting that. So I agree with Dr. Ruggles. The only thing I will say is the reason we went to monthly collection is because we didn't want to wait to quarterly, and then they missed the second quarter. Now they owe several $100s. Mark and Lewis and I talked yesterday. We will come back, hopefully in 2 weeks, to tell you our attack plan, which is going to cause a lot of people a lot of problems. But we're going to talk about water shutoffs very soon. April, we can start shutting off water. And if you owe us a sewer bill or a trash bill, you're going to find yourself you're going to have to move or something. Our other problem right now is the amount of turnover, the transiency in the city, especially our apartments in the West Ward, where people, as I told you once before, I was just at Paxton School last Thursday, and they're basically telling me that 60% of the kids who started school in September will not be there in May. So if those people are leaving, we're never going to collect that money. So I agree with you. We got to collect it immediately. When it's 5 days overdue, you make that phone call. And Lewis and I talked after we met with Mark about maybe it's time to bring in some part-time employees or third-party employees just to collect, to make those phone calls. Aunt Pete, God bless her, she was the best delinquent caller we had. She called everybody. Oh, don't you know you're getting all your services? I mean, she was really good at handling delinquent accounts. So we need. It's not fair to us taxpayers who pay our taxes and pay our rent, our utilities, and have to pay more of it because you got $500,000 outstanding. That's just not fair. It's not fair and consistent with which we want our mantra to be, that people pay their fair amount of money to live in this city. So I agree with Dr. Ruggles. 90 days. We may have to relook at that, Mark. 90 days, maybe two. We may just send them a support off. As soon as we can't handle the account, or as soon as people aren't, we should just send it.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Ruggles.
The other thing that we brought up in the last meeting, and I don't know if the administration has talked about this or not, but you know, I feel bad for people who have been negatively impacted by COVID. And I mean, I understand that it's not the easiest thing in the world, but I mean, I wouldn't want them who have this negative impact to have additional costs added to them because they're in a collection mode, okay? So I don't know how we do that, but I would be very much in favor of identifying individuals that have been negatively impacted, and I don't know. I mean, just saying, okay, we're going to postpone your collection, you know, or sending it to Portnoy for whatever time frame it is. But I think it would be very beneficial if we would take into consideration individuals' financial status that has been impacted by COVID.
I think when you, depending on our allocation, when we were originally talking $15 to $20 million, I think you'll see some of those types of programs and the ability to participate in those grants and or low interest loans will be based on things like, are you gainfully employed? Are you working? Are you trying to get a job? How has pandemic impacted you? I mean, I was telling the staff, and I think I told you this morning, Dr. Douglas. I'm hearing people who work part-time, and I didn't realize that if you work part-time and were cut unemployed because of COVID, you didn't need the 3/4 of work in order to qualify for unemployment benefits. So maybe you were getting $70, $80 a week rather, from unemployment. You also got the $600. That's not fair. That's not fair to the guy or girl who's working for $12 an hour, 40 hours a week, and get $600. So there's a lot of areas that hopefully will have the pot of money to make more fair and help those people that are truly impacted by the pandemic. Stimulus funds are everybody getting $1,400 check. Not everybody deserves it. Many people never lost an ounce of income. Most of them are government employees, whether they be employed by the government, state, the federal government, school district, whatever it is. They still got their paycheck. For them to get $1,400, for me to get $1,400, it's not fair. It's just not. But I know the federal government just said the easiest thing to do is just to give it out because it take too long to go through everybody's income to see what it is. So I think there's a lot of, if this money comes through, and we're going to work hard. Somebody said, my day today and yesterday was spent lobbying for money. This job that I have and that you have is really dependent on how much finances you have. And right now our finances aren't good, and we need all the help we can get. That's fair. I don't want more than we deserve, but I don't want less either. If other communities are getting it, we should. And Philadelphia's getting $1 trillion. I'm sorry, $1 billion. Well, they deserve it. We've got 1.5 billion people. But that being said, I think Dr. Robles brings up a lot of good points, and we should talk about it because it's not fair to go after somebody who doesn't have the wherewithal to pay us and let them go 90 days. And maybe, when I think of things, maybe we need some money to go towards, I had money when I had my wish list of $18 million. I had some of that money going towards affordable housing. And my position on affordable housing has changed. In talking to the experts at National League of Cities and stuff, my position with affordable housing is that we got to build houses. Some people, as I did, I talked about 20%, 25% of all new apartments have to be below market rate. It doesn't do a poor person any good to pay rent, not get any equity. What they need to do is pay a mortgage and build up family wealth. And we need to talk about building houses that are affordable, that are maybe $20,000 or $25,000 below the appraised value, so that somebody who's only making $15 an hour, has a family of 3 or 4, can live there, and over time, as they're paying down their mortgage, they're building up the family wealth. And hopefully we can get to that point. But all of it is dependent upon the federal government. And we'll be putting people to trades to work. We're putting plumbers and carpenters and roofers and engineers and masonry, putting them to work. We'll be stimulating the economy. Anything else,
Mark, could you elaborate on your comment regarding the real estate taxes and why they're not on the presentation you have here?
They're not on here because we just went through the discount period and the installment period. So we're still finalizing those numbers. So rather than present that at this point, I would ask for a few more weeks just to get that together so that I can pull together more accurate comparisons of where we are versus maybe last year or the last couple of years, and say, okay, at this point through the discount period we had collected X in dollars, a percentage of the outstanding total, so that we can compare. But right now we just don't have the numbers compiled yet to really make that accurate comparison.
Can you break down the 2020 numbers then?
Well, sure. The 2020 numbers,
Yeah.
the uncollected. So every year, the finance team, as has been practice, every year, any unpaid real estate taxes that are not paid by December 31st, excuse me, are turned over to Portnoy. So that $690,000 that I referenced in the first slide is basically all of our uncollected 2020 real estate taxes.
And so you don't have a breakdown by who made the first payment, who didn't make the second payment, and so forth? You don't have that breakdown?
Not well. No, not. I could pull that together.
Okay.
Mr. Milan, if you'd like, I can do that, and that can maybe give us an idea and help maybe with the point Dr. Ruggles was making, is seeing who made some sort of maybe good faith effort, and then others who maybe just didn't pay at all. And I don't want to make any judgments. I don't know what everybody's situation is, but that might give us a little more insight into what's going on. So that's a good suggestion. I will have that for next meeting.
Okay.
Mayor, if I can chime in just quickly back to Roger's comments.
I was just going to call on you for your report.
Okay, Roger, maybe it would be helpful at a committee meeting to have maybe not so much the county, but staff come in, John Kingsley, and review Northampton County's mediation and eviction diversion program, which does assist low to moderate income individuals on both renters and mortgage payments. So as you're digging into this, it'll give you a better perspective on what's out there already, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, I agree that we need to focus on, we have to have a focus on the low to moderate income, but I mean, there's a lot of people that are not in that category that have lost their jobs and just don't have an income at this point in time. Maybe are going to be getting their jobs back in 2 or 3 months, whatever. But, just have they're in a situation where they don't have the cash right now to do this. And those are individuals too that I think need some assistance in just not the fact that we're going to waive anything, but just, we're not going to send it to Portnoy where they're going to all of a sudden start to tack on, all kinds of additional costs to it, and that's what I'm trying to get away from is, just driving that bill higher and higher for them. That's what I was trying to get away from.
No, I understand. Why don't I'll
I
contact you directly.
I think having that from the county would be a very good way to start, at least. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'll contact you then directly off the call and then see what you want to do.
And Mark, this is no offense at all, but I honestly think I was looking at your report that you sent out, and I mean, no offense here. I realize you can't close it till close to the end of the month, but for me, I don't want to waste my time doing that again. I mean, the one you send out to me that are preliminary numbers. I was looking at the numbers and I said, this doesn't tell me anything. This doesn't tell me anything. This doesn't tell me anything. And I was just going through it. And I mean, I would rather see the hard numbers at the end of the month, and let's discuss those. And this first one, just it doesn't give me any information, really. I mean, because if I were to ask you a question, usually the response is, well, we don't have the final numbers on those yet,
We agree with you, Dr. Ruggles. We agree 100%, administration, but this is what City Council had asked us for.
I understand, but that was not quite a year ago, but it was close to that. And I think that, to me, and I don't know about the other members of council, but to me, give me the final numbers in the month where you have actual values and not preliminary values, and then that tells me something. But the preliminary values, they really don't mean that much to me.
We will talk to Councilmember Brown and get that, get his input.
Okay.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to say that tonight is 1 year that I was in Washington, D.C. getting an update on this virus from Vice President Pence at the time. We had arrived at a national city's meetings on Sunday, and I left on Wednesday, and we didn't know anything about it until we got there. Boy, oh boy, it's been a tough year. But, good news is there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train. So let's hope for the best. We'll be down as quickly as we can. All right, Madam Clerk, we're on unfinished business.
Okay, under unfinished business, we had a ordinance being introduced by Mr. Ettinger, where it would amend section 560-54, which is the parking restrictions for street cleaning.
So moved.
Second.
Moving to second, any discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano.
Aye.
Okay, under new business, before we get to that, Jim, you want to, Councilman Ettinger, you want to make some comments as well as Dave Hopkins. So why don't you let Dave into the room, and Councilman Ettinger, I'll turn the floor over to you. And then if council doesn't have a problem with it, and you heard from the city solicitor about changes that have been made to the contracts about the venue being Northampton County Code of Common Pleas, I'd like to take A to G as one resolution, just as one vote. If we vote on it. Go ahead, Mr. Ettinger.
Are we going to promote Dave Hopkins, the panelist here?
We're supposed to be.
I don't think he's on.
Yeah, do you?
He's been promoted. Just it takes I think a moment or so.
He was in the attendees, so he'll be coming on.
Usually it doesn't take this long.
No, it doesn't. He's not in the attendee list.
Louis, you gotta watch your language when you say he's been promoted.
It doesn't appear that Mr. Hopkins may have to be getting back into it. We're having problems with City Hall's web computer servers today. I mean, I was kicked out every time that they came up. They didn't kick me out. As it happens all the time. Sometimes when they kick me out, I had Oriental right.
He's there now.
I see him. Mr. Ettinger, Mr. Hopkins has joined us in the room, so if you want to move forward. Oh, there he goes out again. Oh, there he is. Okay, turn his camera on. Mr. Ettinger?
Going to the resolution. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Are we going to proceed with the resolution?
Yes. It's good, but if you have any comments about the 4th Street Garage, or you want David to just introduce it?
Well, the items that we discussed earlier, that the question was about.
We're not understanding you, Councilman.
Nope, can't hear you.
Not understanding you. You're cutting in and out. Do you know how to turn the camera off?
Let me try that.
Try to keep. There you go. Now try.
Is that any better?
Much
Yes.
better.
Yes, much better.
Yeah, there were just some questions that we discussed about regarding the PLA with one of the specific contractors, but I think that those are resolved. I asked Dave to be here in case anybody else had any other questions. So if we could start with the first resolution.
Well, Dave, why don't you update City Council on what the PLA is? Obviously, our project labor agreement. Why don't you just update them on the status of that?
Sure. Can you hear me okay? So As far as I'm aware, the prime contractor has a tentative agreement, or at least an agreement drafted that they've come to terms with. And that agreement is going to be part of their required submittals. So normally what we do is when council awards a contract, we send that with a notice of award to the contractor requiring them to post their bonds and insurances and any other required paperwork depending on the project. In this case, one of the conditions of the notice of award will be an executed PLA. And per council's resolution, that's a two-party agreement between generally the trade council and the contractor. And so any failure on the part of the contractor to produce that agreement would really null and void the contract. So my understanding is that they're ready when they get a signed contract, they're ready to sign the PLA. And that's what I know to this point. But it's certainly going to be a required document for submittal purposes.
Thank you, Dave. That was the question that I was being asked.
And
Sure.
everybody on council, except for I think Councilmember Milan, I always voted for you. Councilman Milan may have not. I don't. Were you when we approved the PLA? No, it was someone who's no longer with us, and I think maybe Melanie Morrow was one. But we did the PLA, the original PLA.
Mayor, I can't hear you.
The original PLA. And basically what that PLA does is an agreement with the unions, the trade unions, to employ union laborers, or at least local union laborers. It goes out from the city of Easton. So let's say you have an electrician from Easton and one from Allentown, the one from Easton would get to work. So that's just for reminder to City Council what the PLA is. Any other questions on the 4th Street Garage resolutions? Okay, Madam Clerk, I guess we're ready to.
Do you want them individually or as a group?
As a group.
Okay, so we have the first resolution. Well, all the resolutions would be, the number one is a contract with Pannoni Associates for the professional design services to the construction phase of the parking garage. Then there's another one with Pannoni for the special inspection and construction material testing services related to the construction of the parking garage. Then there's an agreement with Parado Builders LLC. They're actually going to provide the general construction services for the 4th Street garage. One with Urban Electrical Contracts. They're actually going to be providing all the electrical construction services for the garage. And then we have two for Warco Group. One is for the plumbing at the 4th Street parking garage, and one is for the mechanical part of the construction of the parking garage.
The motion approved.
And that includes the language that Mr. Scheer provided us earlier.
Yes, that language, Dave and I talked about it. We'll be adding that tomorrow.
That language.
Yeah, yes, so for the record, what it'll be is that all those agreements that are based on the AIA, that's the American Institute of Architects contract form at 6.2, will have added to it where it indicates that the ultimate dispute resolution is going to be through litigation in a court of competent jurisdiction. On each of those, there will be added the language, and parties agree that venue for any dispute will be with the Court of Common Pleas of Northampton County, PA. I just wanted to state it now that it's actually up for a vote for the record.
Hey, Mayor, if I can just add that each of the recommended, the general and the primes, they were all the low bidder, and they were all vetted by the resident engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins, and thank you for overseeing this project. It's important to the city. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
We need a second, Mayor.
I'm sorry, we do need a second.
Second.
Dr. Ruggles will second.
Thank you. Okay. Then the vote is Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
No.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto. Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I think you have A on the agenda.
I'm sorry,
Under
what?
new business. A,
We did A. That was-
amending section 560.
That was unfinished business, Mrs. Volcano.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Anyone from City Council have any comments before I open up to the general public? Hearing none.
I don't know.
Anybody who's in the audience, we have 10 people in the audience this evening would like to address City Council. Please raise your hand. We have Kurt Bresswine, Glenn Fair. Let's take Glenn first because Mr. Ettinger did talk about that. So Tracy, you want to let Glenn Fair into the room?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Glenn.
Have a few
You need your
I have
name.
a few concerns about snow removal or the lack thereof in the 1100 block of Spruce Street. I know it's a lot when we get a lot of snow, but it's a residential alley or street, I should say. And it's pretty bad 3 or 4 days after a snowstorm like we got, that the city finally came and opened up the alleyway. If there was an emergency, God forbid, it could have been a catastrophe. Second is garbage pickup and people on the south side of the block having to move our vehicles for garbage pickup. Due to the snowstorm, I understand that garbage couldn't be picked up as normal, but we were told through phone calls, the first week we didn't get picked up because of the snow. The second week, we were told that the snow was going to be picked up. So everybody on the block has to move our cars, to which no garbage was picked up. And if we don't move, I might add, we get a $25 ticket. Now, the third week, when the garbage finally decided to be picked up, parking authority come up the block and was handing the tickets out. Now, I can understand that if there's no snow piles laying around, but how can the city justify handing tickets out when there is nowhere to move your vehicle to because of the snow or the lack of snow removal, and justify giving tickets? Anyone?
Well, Glenn, I would venture to say that, I would venture to say that you live on a difficult street. And we go through this. This was an enormous storm, 30 inches, 27, 28 inches of snow, where our small vehicles can't push that. And we can't get our big vehicles, our 10-ton trucks, on your street, especially with cars parked there. We have been very lenient with allowing cars to be there, but giving tickets for cars not being moved, the cars not being moved prohibit us from collecting garbage or doing the snow removal. If the cars were removed, we could get in there and clean that street. So it is a difficult thing, and I would ask maybe what we want to do is have a meet and greet and discuss what we can do, like when everybody moves their car, so we get equipment in there. It is a narrow street. Most places would call it an alley, but it is in Easton. We have no alleys. We only have...
I've been calling it an alley for 30 years.
You and me both.
But my I guess my question is, you know, how are we supposed to know? Like, we know garbage day is Thursday. I'm handicapped, to which I don't have a handicapped parking spot yet. But even if I did, I would have to move my vehicle, and I graciously do every week. But because of the snowfall, the amount of snow that we got, and the lack of the attempt to remove the snow, I know alleyways that only have garages in them. And you could have driven a tractor trailer through them, where my residential alleyway wasn't touched for 3 or 4 days after the storm. And that, everyone on council, that is highly unacceptable.
I agree.
Mayor, let me jump in. At the risk of sounding argumentative, no street in the city went 4 days without treatment. We have 14 routes that we went 24 hours for 8 straight days. Everybody in the department 100% participated. So that's 28 guys per day for 8 days. I need to look into your specific block, Mr. Fair, but there's only 2 things that prevented us from doing our job completely, and that was parked cars and snow being thrown back in the alleys where it was just impossible to get a vehicle through without causing damage to either the city vehicle or the parked car. And I want to differentiate between plowing and snow removal. Removal is obviously done with a bucket and has to be trucked away. We don't perform snow removal everywhere. We just can't. In fact, the city had 8 contractors in to the expense of about $250,000 in competition with the state DOT and every other municipality in the Commonwealth. And I thought we did pretty good. And I'll commend the guys. It was an ugly effort. It was uncomfortable for everyone, especially when you park on the street. I park on the street. It's not pleasant in the winter. It doesn't bring out the best in everybody. But I can tell you that if there was the only way you, and I drove through Spruce Street, I don't recall being completely blocked. As for garbage pickup, you are right. There is a posting for a parking restriction. I called the parking supervisor when Mr. Edinger, in fact, Mr. Edinger was on the phone with me. We didn't have parking enforcement staff in the city for 2.5 weeks.
Right.
So I'm not really sure what happened, but I would assume after 2.5 weeks, the PEOs probably had to start ticketing people to get them out of the way. I mean, the bottom line is there's no easy way to do this with that accumulation of snow. We're frustrated. The residents are frustrated. You know, we didn't have any other resources to deal with this storm. We were out of manpower, equipment, materials. I mean, planning, you know, everything we had went into it. But, you know, we do the best we can, and we are well planned. We have someone manning the phones 24 hours a day. We have mechanics in the garage 24 hours a day to keep keep the trucks on the street. So, you know, things do fall through the cracks, but I'd be happy to talk with you offline, but I'm not aware of anybody that didn't have service to their home. And we ask the police generally too, as they're circulating through the city, to let us know of issues. And I'm just not aware of that particular one. So.
Okay, well, I beg to differ. I'm not going to be argumentative, like you said, but this always happens when we get a huge amount of snow. And I understand we live in a small street, but we still also pay our taxes. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that it took at least 3 days for a Bobcat backhoe to come down through the alley to clear the snow, because the city, for the lack thereof, stopped coming to plow. I'll say maybe 10 hours into the storm, and we didn't see another plow until the backhoe or the Bobcat.
Well, there was a reason the Bobcat showed up, and that was because a plow couldn't get through the street.
I understand that. I get it, but it's hard to fathom when a plow comes down the street and the plow isn't all the way down to the street to remove the snow, let alone throw salt. I mean, one of my neighbors, all he did was tell one of the workers that he was out of salt, and one of the workers said to him, "Don't be a wise guy." And he was just trying to get some salt down on our street. I mean, you know what? We try to be nice to the guys, but when you bring something up like that up, and you get that thrown at you, it kind of aggravates you. I mean, also we're trying to keep our sidewalks clear and not throw it into the street, because if we don't clear our sidewalks, we'll get a fine also. And that's a whole other subject where you have these vacant buildings that people don't live in, and they're not removing their snow, but the residents of the city have to do it, or we get a fine.
Well, I can assure you that if you knew somebody who did not clear their snow, a phone call to us, because we gave out lots of citations, including developers and absentee landlords, and even some of my own neighbors got them. We gave out citations. The code department was out there. They waited 3 days. They gave everybody 72 hours to get it done. And it wasn't done. They got a citation, and it went back the next day. If it still wasn't done, they got another citation. So, Glenn, I can assure you that we did give out citations. And if you ever see that, just call our code department up and let them know that there's a property that's not been cleaned.
Okay, so I have to call the code department for that in the future?
That's the code department.
Okay.
Mr. Fair, can I have your address, please?
1132 Spruce Street.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You should have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you very much for joining in. Tony, will you let Tony in, Tracy?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we need your name and address, Tony.
Yeah, it's Tony Claypatch, and my address is 5 North 3rd Street, Easton, PA. So I just had a few questions about the 4th Street garage that was approved. One of them is the access to the back of the Easton Public Market. During construction, will people still be able to access the public market at the rear for curbside pickup and just pedestrians walking back there for outdoor dining?
The garage does not extend to the roadway. It does extend into the parking area of that, the diagonal parking area, but that's as far as it goes. But they may have to close it down for a day or two when they're doing, maybe when they're bringing big crane or something. But the intent is not to close that down at all. I mean, not to block that. Mr. Hopkins, you want to add to that?
I think we're probably going to have to find an alternative means of accessing the market. We talked briefly about it, but we haven't come up with a plan yet, simply because it's been complicated by the placement of the concrete blocks. So that's something I'm going to have to speak with the market about themselves. But I think in looking at the extent of the construction, it's going to be very difficult to have any consistency of access in the rear.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments, Tony. Kurt Breswine.
Okay, I should be good now, right? You can hear me?
You're good, Kurt. Go ahead.
Hi, Kurt from 18 Center Square. My question is also about the parking garage construction. Can you walk us through the timeline for when you would begin work over there? And I think you're talking about roughly about a year of construction until it's open. Is that accurate?
Well, I'll let Dave Hopkins give you the timeline, but we're expecting it to be completed May of 2022. It really depends on the precast concrete lag. Dave, you want to address the timeline?
Sure. I think starting around late spring, early summer, Kurt, you'll see the foundation system go in for the garage. The unknown in a lot of ways is the lead time for the precaster and when that can start being delivered to the site. We're shooting for a May 22 completion and placing it into service to move on to other projects. But basically you'll see, foundation work continue through and other site work, we are going to construct a plaza back there. So that'll be most of what 2021 entails. And then depending on the timing of the precast is when we can see the garage coming out of the ground.
Gotcha, thank you. And I thought I heard at the meeting on the 24th that the plaza was no longer part of the plan. So the plaza is still part of the project then?
It is. What the city chose to do was to not select certain alternates in the bid that would have provided, say, overhead structures for lighting, various trellises, and really some of the more decorative elements. I think we're going to have to look to other funding sources and grants to fund those in the future. But I mean, it's going to be a nice public space. It's just not going to have some of the architecturally designed features, but it'll still serve its general function as a public plaza.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the help.
You're welcome.
Lisa, first you want Lisa in? Lisa, your name and address, please. And unmute yourself. Thank
Lisa Mano, 34 North 2nd Street.
Okay, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm calling for some more clarity about the new parking pass legislation. Are you waiting for a vote from the council, or is this going to be enacted?
Well, first of all, it's not. There's nothing to enact because there's no recommendation to City Council. There is a meeting in 2 weeks on Tuesday night to get input from the public, but there's no Do you currently have a permit?
Yes, I do.
Not effective. The comments I made 2 weeks ago was that those that have a permit would be able to continue, but no new permits would be issued, so only renewals. And the reason for that is just the sheer number of restaurants, sheer number of residents that have the permit allowing them to park on the street. We have, as I said, we have a finite number of 911, and we already have close to 700 permittees. So you can't have more permits than you have spaces. And but those that have it will be allowed to continue to get it renewed every year, provided they still live in the downtown area.
Are you intending on raising that amount that it costs?
That's not up to me, but my recommendation is no.
Your recommendation is no?
Okay.
Okay.
My recommendation
Okay.
does not include an increase. But I will tell you that I did look, that if that program was started by me, by the way, in 1987, and if you indexed it, it would be $230 today. And that's not what we're not even talking. I saw some people talk about, oh, are you going to raise it to $125? No, we're not. The intent is, the city doesn't make any money on it now. A space at a meter makes about $11 a day if it's full, and about $13,000 and a year, and we're giving it away for $100. The intent is not to make money on residents. The intent is to control it and manage it, and that's all we're doing. And that's the total recommendation. For new people, I will be recommending a reduced price in the garage.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
That answers all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, it's by Zoom, but one of these days we'll be back to public. Anyone else? I see no other hands raised. Tracy, do you?
Mr. Lesnicki has his hand raised, but I'm wondering if that was an accident.
Mark, you have your hand up?
Not anymore, sorry.
Not anymore. Okay, good catch, Tracy. Anyone else want City Council like to address City Council? Thank you, and again, I hate to beat a dead horse, but call up Congressman Wild and Senator Casey and tell them how important this is, so that we can help our people, we can help reopen the economy, and help our less fortunate. But also, just so you know, the vote today was 220 to 211 in the House. So it's, and you know, it was 50 to 49 in the Senate. So this doesn't have a lot of support. We need to make it. The president's going to sign it into law on Friday. And we just need to get as much of the federal dollars that we can of that 1.9 trillion. Thank you. We'll have a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
No one wants to go
Second.
home? Okay, Mrs. Volcano, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Dr. Ruggles? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Pienso,
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Be safe.